All right, well, welcome everyone to our October PTSA meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, so we have a full agenda this evening. We're going to go through a number of updates. We want to make sure that you know about the upcoming events this evening. Coming up this month. And at the beginning of November. And then after we go through the PTSA updates, we're going to go to Mr. Nelson for some principal updates. And then after that, we'll turn it over to Pavel, who will present on our topic for the evening, and that's navigating PSAT, SAT, and ACT standardized testing. So we'll move on from there. So I just want to provide another reminder on how you can support Wooten. The best way to support Wooten through a PTSA annual membership. That is really how we receive most of our dues most of our funding to support Wooten, and a lot of the activities and things that we do throughout the year come from this funding. We do have some events and fundraisers and things like that that help us to supplement some of the programs, like our grants program, and supporting the prom and other events that happen throughout the year, as well as teacher appreciation. So if you would like to join, if you haven't already, if you did, thank you very much. You can go to our webpage and you can join on there. I'm going to turn it over to Catherine to give the membership update.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Sure can, Catherine.
Yeah, so as of last night, we have 876 members. Among them, we have 442 parent memberships. So comparing to last year, we still have close to 200 or less than 200 memberships to go. But our goal, I think last year we set a goal of 1,200. So I think it would be nice if we can hit 1,100 this year.
Thank you, Catherine.
Sure, thank you.
And now we'll move on to our community outreach program. I'm going to turn it over to Nikki for that. Nikki, are you on? All right, why don't we'll skip over this one. We'll circle back. Ashish, would you mind turning off the waiting room, please? Okay, and now we have our secretary updates, and that is Ashish.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Ashish Meyer. I am the secretary for PTSA. I have two quick updates. One, just for everyone's information, that every third Tuesday, which is actually today as well, at 7 p.m., we will be having our general body meeting for the PTSA, all parents, teachers, and of course, Doug and PTSA core body will be available at this meeting. We will be picking up guest presenters for this, and we will be looking for all the ideas you guys can come up with to share with us to see who we can make a topic or a speaker for the coming months here on forward. The next one is actually our the principal's coffee chat happens on the third week as well on the Fridays. It's usually during the work hours. So either 9 a.m. or 10:30 a.m., depending on the schedule, we have that already on the calendar. And then it will be coming up to you as an email reminder when that meeting is going to be a couple of days in advance. We will also encourage everyone, if you have any questions for what's happening in the school, If any ideas they might want to share, it's a good forum for us to ask those questions from our principal, and then he can have those answers prepared a day in advance. And that's why we have requested everyone, like we did last month, I'm sorry, to have the questions sent a day in advance so he can review and have the answers ready for him to share with the entire the family who was actually attending it that day. So our next coffee chat would be coming this Friday, and I believe it's at 10:30. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Doug.
It's at 9 o'clock.
Nine
I put
o'clock.
it in the chat.
My bad.
Yeah,
It's
that,
at
that didn't
9:30.
get updated.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. I added that into the chat, so it'll be this Friday at 9 a.m. And also, Ashish talked about topics. So we are looking for a topic for our November meeting. In December, we do the alumni panel every year. So if you have a student who has just recently started college and they may be interested in joining our alumni panel, and that's an opportunity for parents and students to listen to how the first semester went for our graduates. So it's a great opportunity. We usually get a good turnout that evening, and it's a great opportunity to ask questions and learn about how the students selected their colleges and how those first semesters are going. So we look forward to that every year. I wanted to provide a reminder that the Wooten School store can be found on the Wooten PTSA website. You can find the tab at the top of the screen. It's hosted by squadlocker.com. You can get all different types of apparel from top brands, and there's a variety of logos that you can select from. So if you're looking for apparel or Wooten gear, it's a great place to go. And 10% of the proceeds come back to PTSA. So we still have a couple of positions where we're very fortunate that we have a great group of volunteers that have joined PTSA this year. We're still looking for 2 cluster reps, Latino parent, student network liaison, and a co-leader for the African American parent student network liaison. So if you or someone you know might be interested, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to provide more information.
And Brian, may I chime in? I do believe that we might have found a co-lead for African American Parent Network.
Oh, that's
So
excellent
I
news.
think we've got that one. That's good news.
Yeah, that's great news. Checking if Nikki is on.
Yep, I'm here, Brian.
Oh, hey, Nikki. Nice to see you. I'm going to move this back over here, and we'll turn it over to you to talk about community outreach.
Yeah, so Jen couldn't make it. She was running a little bit late. So I'm gonna jump right into the holiday helping hands because community outreach, there's 2 separate programs. So we have Jen does community outreach all year long for students in need in the cluster. But then separately, we do the holiday helping hands program, obviously mainly November and December. And this program provides not only gifts, but also items that these children need. A lot of the students in the program need clothing, they need toiletries, they need kind of basic necessities. And so the way it works is we reach out to all of the counselors at all of the cluster schools. They assess the need of the students that go to their schools and any siblings that those students might have even outside of the cluster. And then they return forms to us with information about the students. So what size clothes they wear, what they're interested in. And then Jen and I make registries for each of these children. Jen primarily does it, but I help out a little bit too because it gets a little hectic. And so we customize like a gift registry for each one of these students in the program. We do this at Target and at Amazon. We have all the links on the website, on the PTSA website. And we do start, we'll be starting this pretty soon, sending out something in the newsletter each week. There'll be a little section on the needs that are out there. And so we expect to have forms back from all of our families by the middle of November so that we can get all of those registries created so that everyone can shop before Black Friday and on Black Friday when we know that there are better deals and we can spread the dollars further. And so just be on the lookout for communications from us about the program. Let us know if you have any questions. There are a lot of frequently asked questions on the website. Really, if you go to the website, everything should be there that you need, but our email is also on there. You can always reach out to us. I see that Noreen is on here tonight, and she's going to be helping us out this year. We are very grateful to her. She's going to be helping us with communications and spreading the word, especially with the cluster schools, to make sure that they are involved as well. So I know that's a lot of information, a little bit of time. If you're new and you haven't participated in the program before, definitely reach out to us if you have questions. We also already have it up on the website, but students can sign up to get SSL hours for gift wrapping. That's already on our page. If they want to sign up to volunteer, all of that information is already up there. But like I said, again, the community outreach program, that runs all year. And then we do this specific holiday helping hands program right at the holiday times. It tends to be when most of our support is given at that time. We try to, capture all of those children, but occasionally Jen will reach out at other times of the year if she has a family outside of that window for the holiday program. So I'll stick around for a little bit. So if you have questions also, you can put them in the chat. Happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you, Nikki. And you could also stop by and see Nikki and Jen at the Fall Festival that we're going to talk about in a little while. All right. So now I want to share some upcoming events. As you all probably know, this Friday is GLOCO for our homecoming game, and the GLOCO event that will happen immediately following the football game. It is really important, if your student is planning to go, that you purchase your tickets. You can get those in the school cash online store. It's sitting in there right now, so it's very easy to go in there and purchase your ticket. That's what I did for my daughter. Or you can purchase, your student can purchase at school tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day to purchase GLOCO tickets. And then the next time to purchase the tickets is going to be at the door, which it's going to be a very long line. So I encourage you to get tickets early for that. We still need some parent volunteers. There's a Sign Up Genius link. It's in the presentation. It's also in the newsletter. So if you're available to help out even for a small amount of time, please help us. We appreciate it. We're also looking for water and cases of water and snack donations. Those can be dropped off into to the front office up through Thursday. And SGA is coming by and picking those items up and getting those ready for Friday. So we do appreciate any donations that you can give us. And let us know if you have any questions for that event. And then I mentioned the Fall Festival. So the Fall Festival is coming up next Saturday, not this coming Saturday, a week from Saturday. We're very excited about it. Last year we had to bring it indoors due to rain, but right now the forecast is looking pretty good. So we're very hopeful that we're going to have it outside in the lower parking lot. This is a cluster event, so that means that all 9 of our schools in our cluster, 6 elementary, 2 middle schools in Wootton, will be together for this fall event. We're going to have a lot of games. Our students at Wootton are going to be doing lots of games for the different grades, different classes. SGA is going to have a cake raffle. There'll be a DJ and photo booth, inflatable, and community organizations will be out. We'll have some food trucks, and some of the Wootton clubs will be there. And we have a really full performance schedule. We have a lot of great performances from different programs at Wootton, like Akatonics and Palms, marching band, and so forth. So it's going to be a great afternoon. Join us from 12 to 4 in the lower lot at Wootton. And we are also going to have trunk or treat. We're inviting our younger students, or all students, to come in costume. And we are asking for donations of candy. So any bags of candy that you can donate to us, we would be most appreciative of that. We're going to have 6 cars that'll be trunk or treat cars from Wootton students that are going to arrange that, and we want to provide them with candy that they can give out to the younger students. And with that event as well, let us know if you have any questions. And then last event that I wanted to mention, we will be gathering Wooten families to go to the Board of Education on Monday, November 6th for the capital improvement program testimony. This is really important. The CIP is the part of the budget that funds facilities. We have been, many of you know, we've been trying to get our facility renovated. Our capital improvement project got pushed indefinitely. We're not sure what that date will be, but we're looking to get back on the schedule, and we're hoping to get additional improvements done to the building as well. We have SGA students that are lined up to testify. They're working with some of the other students around Wooten to also get testimony. And it's a great evening where our students are out there testifying and advocating for each other and for the school. And parents can register to testify. Usually the registration opens about now, but I haven't seen registration. It's usually about, well, I guess it's about 2 weeks before, so maybe next week we'll see the registration. So parents can register as well. We do get testimony from our cluster schools. We will have signs for our cluster, and we do ask that we'd like to get as many families as we can to come out and support this effort and show the board how important it is that our cluster doesn't get left behind. Crown High School is going to be completed in 2027. I get a lot of questions about Crown. For those of you that have driven around the Rio area, you'll see that the construction is underway. They've cleared the land. They have pictures up of Crown High School, and the building, the construction is going to get started I believe in early 2025. So they are expected to be done in 2027. We'll see. But there will be a boundary study involving 11 high schools coming up, probably starting in sometime in 2025, and there will be representation from the Wooten cluster to participate on the boundary study when they get that underway. And I do believe an RP was out looking for the company that's going to be running that. And just so you know, the Board of Education has moved. Used to be at the Carver Education Center across from Montgomery College. It is now moved to Goody Drive. So it's a bigger hearing room, and that's where we'll be headed. We'll be providing a lot more information as we get a little bit closer. And I do want to provide a reminder of the PTSA restaurant night. I know we're very far out, but we want to keep it out there. It's going to be Wednesday, December 4th at Falls Grove. And this is the second year we're doing this with Chipotle, Mama Lucia, Moby Dick's, and Jersey Mike's. And this is helping to raise money for PTSA. And now I'll turn it over to Doug for principal updates.
Thank you, Brian. It's really nice to be with everyone. Let's get my screen shared here. All right, so I have a few important updates to share with everybody. Just to carry forward what Brian was talking about earlier, it's an exciting week, of course, at Wooten. It is homecoming. GlowCo is back once again, and we are looking forward to welcoming hundreds of our students following the football game on Friday night, which is a professional day. That's right, students kind of get that day to get ready, probably check in with friends, maybe grab some food before coming to a football game, and then, of course, off to GlowCo. I would like to express my appreciation to this group. The PTSA helps us in many, many ways on that night. In order to have a really successful event that actually takes care of all of the moving parts, it does take some commitment and volunteering to get through that evening. So if you are someone who is coming to volunteer and give us a helping hand, please let me express on behalf of the entire Wooten team that's coordinating this event, we really appreciate you. And if you can volunteer, possibly help us with that, we're gonna always use an extra set of hands. Just some reminders about coming to homecoming. Someone asked me a very thoughtful question I had never thought through before, but I wanted to pass it along in case anyone's kids are thinking about this at home. So homecoming is still a home football game, even though we have a GlowCo event that follows that. So please be sure to take a look at what the homecoming football guidance still requires, which means students from another school who are not part of the two competing schools cannot attend a football game and then go to GlowCo. You can have a visitor approval to attend GlowCo, but you would need to come after the football game because we don't have approval based upon the safety plans and structures that are in place in order to have students from another guest high school attending that football game. So please be sure to keep that in mind, and we really do hope we have a great turnout. A reminder, tomorrow is PSAT day for all 10th graders that would like to test, any 11th graders that like to choose to test. There's information that has been communicated with students about where their testing locations are, but do not worry if someone doesn't have that in their email or can't access that. We will have master lists when students arrive tomorrow. If you are actually coming in to test, we will be there to help get students out to their testing locations. Good news for us, we're using the online testing platform for the second time. So we come back a little more prepared. We understand kind of what to do to troubleshoot our exam takers. So we really look forward to having a quick and successful start with testing. And in all of those locations, teachers are ready to show up and administer the exam. Students who are not planning on taking the PSAT tomorrow, it is not required that you be here as we are not running a normal first period for exam. So really, it's just for PSAT test takers tomorrow to come to school. If students do need to come to school, please know that they will go to a study hall holding space throughout the morning testing. So they will have a chance to read a book, catch up on assignments, get some things done. There will be a place for them to go and staff to monitor all of that. But please know that if you do need to send students on the bus or whatever that is, that will be running normal schedule, normal bus function tomorrow. Seniors are invited to come in for the senior breakfast, which starts around 9:30 a.m. So we invite them to come in and enjoy some time together. And if you are someone who is also volunteered to bring in some food or help make that a successful event for our students, thank you very much. And then the latter part of our day is the tie-dye event, which is our school spirit event. So students that want to come in, I will let you know that I have my tie-dye shirt ready to go. It's here. So we have got those shirts out to students and staff, and we will be out in different rotations out on the backfield tomorrow, tie-dyeing, enjoying good music, socializing out in the backfield, taking a break from some testing, some pretty heavy testing in the morning. So I really look forward to this day, and I hope that the kids and staff have a great time. Next week is Mental Health Awareness Week. You will see that MCPS has communicated information and what you need to know about that event system-wide. I believe that that email came out this afternoon. Wooten also has its specific plan, and that is really overseen by Ms. Branham, who is our social worker. She coordinates with Bridge to Wellness, which is our program at the school. And there will be some Wooten-specific events throughout the week next week in order to draw attention to the importance of noting one's mental health. Taking care of ourselves actually includes paying attention to this so that we know that our students are well taken care of. So we will have some special events for that. A note, bus evacuation drills happen in MCPS at schools twice a year. We have a fall and then a spring evacuation where we practice. Ours is next week, so students should be prepared if you're a bus rider. We're going to work with transportation and the supervisors there to practice actually hopping off the bus and then reboarding, the whole system you would use should there ever be a time that you need to get off the bus for an emergency situation. A little note that I just put on this slide kind of before jumping on. I saw that another school posted about this, so I wanted to follow up and just let everyone know we have some great news. The College Board will identify certain schools based upon 3 specific criteria and then award an AP honor roll at different levels, the highest of which being platinum. And I'm very proud to say that Wooten, just like last year, is once again a platinum award-winning school for our AP success. It really comes down to all the support of the staff, but also to all of the parents, the support you provide to your students and finding their success in AP all the way to taking exams and then doing well in those exams. That is quite an honor. So, Brian, that is my update for this evening.
Doug, you have some questions in the chat.
Okay. So this question is about what time should students arrive for the tie-dye event if not taking the PSAT? So there is a schedule in the community update if you want to look at it point by, I believe it is 12:30 for the tie-dye event. But here's the good news about the tie-dye event. You're in rotation and you can kind of go out, like it doesn't have a really hard, fast beginning. So you're gonna be okay. I'm gonna recommend 12:30 and you don't need to worry about that one because you just go right out to the tie-dye event. Do you need to excuse your child from school tomorrow? We will not have a formal attendance, but I never think it is a bad idea to complete the form and bring that in if you want to make sure that things are officially excused. Great questions.
And then the last one, I'm not sure, I may have
might have
that
missed it.
one. The graphic calculator for PSATs.
And that one, unfortunately, so this one says for sophomores taking the PSAT, can they bring a graphing calculator? I unfortunately do not know the answer to that question, but I'll tell you where I would go if I was looking for the answer. Again, to the community update. The community update specifically has like the user support guide for PSAT. What I would imagine, my guess as a former testing coordinator, is there's going to be functionality built into that Chromebook because testing really wants everything to be right on one device. So please know there's probably an opportunity to just open something on the actual testing platform that is a calculator when a calculator can be used. But again, I would reference that guide. This question, is the shirt the one bought online for a tie-dye event? Yes, yes it is.
Okay, and we have a raised hand. Go ahead with your question.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
We sure
We
can.
can.
Yes. So I just want to make sure. I have my 9th grader just keep telling me that he doesn't need to go to school tomorrow. And I was like, I'm not sure. So are you saying that they don't have to go to school? And I heard that they have to have leave schedule. Excuse, I'm confused.
So I'll give you the direct answer. So technically, we are not allowed to say that students can't go to school. But there are in high school certain days where testing, it does not make as much sense to do so. And tomorrow is one of those days. So PSAT is a day in which this happens. When we get into spring testing in May, there will be a small set of days in which this is the same structure. It is not necessary for students to come to school tomorrow, but if you need to send your child, you can. Does that make sense?
Yes. And if I don't send him to school, he has to have an excuse absence leave of
You're
some-
certainly welcome to follow up to make sure, but it will not be an issue tomorrow because we are not taking a formal period by period attendance.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we're gonna move on to the presentation. Doug, there are a couple of other questions in the chat, and I'll let you answer those in the chat, and we'll move
Will
on
do.
to our special presentation for this evening. So I'd like to welcome Pavel from who's a co-founder of Potomac Tutoring, and he's here to talk, which is a local test prep and college consulting company. And the company has over a decade of test prep experience. Pavel specializes in helping students prepare for the SAT and ACT. He is a proud graduate of Wooten High School. Go Patriots. Pavel enjoys staying involved in the community and helping families achieve their educational goals. And Pavel and Potomac Tutoring are a very big supporter of Wooten and PTSA. So, and we're very appreciative of that. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Pavel for tonight's presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much for that kind introduction, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to, stay involved with the community. I'll be presenting today about the PSAT. I know that some of you, know that it's happening for 10th and 11th graders, as Principal Nelson mentioned, tomorrow. And yeah, just wanted to kind of share my thoughts with you about that. I'll go ahead and see if I can do a screen share and start the presentation. If at any point I start lagging or cut out, please let me know, and I can switch to another computer. But for now, let me see if this works. Okay, so a few quick notes about the PSAT. If you are right now a little worried about this PSAT coming up tomorrow, please don't worry too much about it. The P in PSAT unofficially means practice. The purpose of the PSAT is to really give parents and students an idea of kind of where they stand in terms of the SAT. So a lot of students are going to take it, quote unquote, unprepared. And I think in many ways that was what it was originally designed for. So if you're worried about your student coming into tomorrow's PSAT unprepared, I can tell you right now, you don't need to worry. They should take it seriously because it is a good indicator of where students are likely to score on the SAT if they were to take it that day. But at the same time, it has no bearing on college admissions. And so there's no need for students to stress out about it or worry. They should just give it their best shot. And so with that in mind, let's kind of take a look at what the PSAT and also in many ways what the SAT is like. So as many of you know, and I'll go ahead and I'll keep an eye on the time as well to make sure that I keep my presentation within time limits here. As many of you know, the SAT and the PSAT are now digital. And so students will be taking it on the computers, and it's also adaptive. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what that means. So adaptive for many families and students means that as they take the test changes difficulty level. But it's not like a lot of other adaptive tests where if you get, for example, a question right, the next question is harder, and if you miss it, the next question is easier. Instead, the PSAT really just changes twice. Everybody takes the first module for the verbal section, that's the same. And the module is just another word for a section. And then depending how they do on that first module, they'll either get the easier module for their second module or the harder module for their second module. And the same thing then happens on the math, where everybody takes the same first module, and then they'll either get the easier second module or a harder second module, depending on how they do on the first module. So students shouldn't worry about, for example, if the next question seems harder than the last. Really, it only, like I said, adapts once in the verbal section and once in the math. It's about 2.5 hours long, depending, again, if you include breaks or not, but it's a shorter test, so that makes it a little bit more manageable for students. Now, I think one of the reasons it's important to know about how it's adaptive is so that, again, students don't stress out about it as much. But it also means that the way students feel about the test afterwards can be a little misleading. So what I mean by that is if a student comes home after tomorrow and says, oh my God, the PSAT was really hard, that's not necessarily a bad sign. That might just mean that they hit the harder modules for their second verbal module and their second math module. And the same thing also can work the other way. If they come home and say, oh, it's so easy, I'll probably be a little bit cautious about that because it just might mean that for whatever reason, they hit this easier second module. And so I would say how they feel about it, I would tell them however they feel about it, not to worry about it too much. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about specifically what the PSAT assesses students on. And so it's very important to remember that these tests are not your typical school tests. This is not your biology test where the more you study the bio units, the better somebody will do, or the more you memorize historical facts in history class or social study class, the better you'll do on the social studies test. The PSAT, the SAT, and the ACT are all skill-based assessments for the PSAT, SAT, or ACT. You can prepare for them just like you can prepare for a tennis match, or maybe a chess tournament, or a music recital. Skill-based activities. And similarly, fundamentally, the PSAT, SAT, and ACT are skill-based assessments. So they're assessing students on the fundamental skills of reading, writing, and math. And that's going to be important to keep in mind later on as we talk about what to expect from PSAT scores and how they can change over time. But it also means that the way you prepare for these tests in the long run, and I'm not, again, for the PSAT, there's really no need to prepare, but I would say that for the SAT and the ACT, the way you prepare for those tests is by strengthening your fundamental reading, writing, and math and problem-solving skills. Now, once we kind of dive into what each test is, or specifically what each section on the PSAT and the SAT is, you'll notice a few changes. So for those of you who, like me, may have taken the old SAT, this was before 2016, then you'll notice that there are actually some similarities. They brought back some things from the SAT that was administered before 2016. And one of those things is the vocab section now on the PSAT and the SAT. To be fair, they're not as, I would say, for lack of a better word, esoteric words like they used to be prior to 2016. I think they try to make or use words that are a little bit more widespread, but there's still some partial SAT when the time comes. One other thing they made that I think students probably prefer is they made the reading passages a little bit more manageable. Oh, am I cutting out? I see that I might be cutting out a little
Yeah,
bit.
you're cutting out a little bit here and there.
Just a little bit, yeah, every now and then.
Okay. Do you want me? I can try to see if I can switch to another computer. Should I switch to another computer, or should I
I
slow
think
down a
continue for
little bit?
now, and if it starts to get bad, we'll let you know.
Okay, sure. I'll try to then make sure that I speak clearly. And so in that case, the reading passages are basically a little shorter. They're not as long as they used to be, which I think students prefer. And I think in the past, students had a hard time focusing on the longer passages. So this gives them a chance to focus on a shorter passage and then just answer one question per passage. They're going to continue assessing students on grammar, which again is something that students can improve within a short period of time. And it's something that they'll need in high school, college, and later on anyway. So that's usually a good investment of time. But they're also introducing a new part that's I've never seen before, and that's the notes section. For the notes section, what students that a hypothetical student took and either summarizing them or emphasizing some parts of them to others. And so again, it's a bit of a different section, but at the same time, it's still fundamentally a verbal section. The math section is going to be assessing students on Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry concepts. And when the SAT comes around, so what that means is for some students who may be taking calculus in 11th grade, they really have already taken all the classes they need. And for many students, it's really about refamiliarizing themselves with concepts from years that from prior years, like geometry, Algebra 1, and Algebra 2. With that being said, I do want to also address some misconceptions or some things to keep in mind about the PSAT, especially for 11th graders, because I see a lot of parents come and say, we want to really do well on the PSAT to get those MMSQT scholarships. And what I always tell parents is, I say, of course, you can try, but you want to keep in mind that these are very difficult scholarships to achieve. And specifically, in 2023, there were only 158 students in all of MCPS who were semifinalists. Finalists will ultimately become finalists. That is true. But at the same time, 158 students makes it very competitive. Specifically from Wooten, it's usually a half a dozen to a dozen students that qualify for the semifinalist status. And even if a student qualifies, we should know that these are not full scholarships. These are $2,500 one-time scholarships. Now, granted, there are also corporate scholarships, and there are also college-based scholarships. But nonetheless, 2,500 times makes it a little tricky to make the PSAT the priority of prep. So what I always tell parents is don't prep just for the PSAT. You should really be prepping for the SAT and the ACT. And the take it seriously. And if you happen to qualify for a scholarship, fantastic. But I always worry a little bit when parents come in for the sole purpose of preparing for the PSAT. That usually makes me a little bit nervous, and I advise them to perhaps reconsider their strategy. The other thing to keep in mind is that these scholarships, they're not necessarily just based on the score alone. what the PSAT does is actually double the weight of the verbal section relative to the math section. That's important to know as well, because what that means is if a student is a little bit more math oriented, they may be at a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to, pursuing these semifinalist or scholarship considerations. So again, my recommendation is, since this has almost no bearing on college admissions, is to just treat it seriously and think of it as a practice test, a reliable indicator of where students are, how they're scoring on this day. The one thing that I also want to take the moment to really emphasize is that the score on the PSAT itself is not as important as the percentiles. And the reason for that is because the score will change over time. So if you are a 10th grader taking it, as you go to Wooten, as you improve your reading, writing, and math skills, in 11th grade and beyond 11th grade, your score should improve naturally, just by virtue of getting stronger reading, writing, and math skills. So if you don't get the score that you're looking for on the PSAT, that's not necessarily a reason to start to worry, because you might very well be on pace to get the score that you want in 11th grade or when you take the real SAT. So what I always tell parents is to focus on the percentiles instead. And specifically, and this is going to be a little maybe complicated, but I want to make sure that everybody understands how to read PSAT scores properly. And the way that I would encourage parents and students to read PSAT scores is, again, to consider what percentiles colleges are looking for on the SAT, and then take a look at how their student is doing on the PSAT. I'll use an example such as University of Maryland College Park. The average accepted score from Wooten into the University of Maryland College Park has traditionally been around the 1420. That's a really high score, and it's in the 94th percentile. So what that means is that when students take the real SAT, they need to score better than 94% of SAT test takers nationally. Again, it's a very high bar. It's a very competitive college. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to get a 1420 as 10th graders, because again, their scores will improve over time. So what I look for is how well is a student doing in terms of percentiles in 10th grade, and then on the 11th grade PSAT. And in this case, for example, I would say that if a student in 10th grade scores a 1210, that would put him in the 94th percentile of 10th graders. And that suggests that they're on pace to score in the 94th percentile of SAT test takers in 11th grade. So if you're trying to figure out what to make of your PSAT score, I would recommend, again, looking at the percentiles. And you can use this little chart as well and say, well, okay, well, if I'm around 1210, that means I'm on pace to score a 1420 by the time that the student takes the SAT in real life in 11th grade, or possibly 12th grade. On the other hand, if, let's say, the student's dream college is University of Maryland College Park, but they take the PSAT as a 10th grader, and then let's say they score a 1050, well, that would suggest that they may need to do something extra to try to strengthen their reading, writing, and math skills. Because if you get a 1050 as a 10th grader, that suggests that you may be on pace to get a 1210. And 1050 for 10th graders is the 77th percentile, and a 1210 is the 77th percentile for SAT test takers. So in that case, if, again, the goal is to, let's say, get into the University of Maryland College Park, then I would recommend that students probably look to expedite their reading, writing, and math skills to make sure that when 11th grade rolls around, usually second semester, that they can go ahead and hit the scores that they're looking to get. And just to confirm, am I still lagging, or am I okay now?
You sound good.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so that, again, kind of gives us an idea of what to look for. So to summarize, the percentiles is what matters. And to give you an idea of what percentiles to look for in the PSAT, I even did a quick chart for some of the nearby schools. If you're looking at a top 20 university, and these are very select, then you really want to try to score in the 99th percentile, whether it be the PSAT or the SAT. And I do want to mention that that is just one factor they'll be looking at. They'll also be looking at grades, extracurricular activities, and other factors. Like we talked about University of Maryland, percentile. University of Maryland, Baltimore campus, 90th percentile from Wootson again. Towson, 77th, and Frostburg, 60th. So again, you can kind of see where you are and then kind of decide what makes sense for you. Let me see. The other thing to keep in mind, let me go ahead and see if I can erase this, is that the percentiles on the PSAT, SAT, and ACT, all of these tests really should be viewed in the context of grades. Because I think a lot of families and students a lot of times think that if they have a lower GPA, they can compensate that for that with a stronger score. But colleges really want the GPA to be where they want it to be. And you can't really compensate for a weaker GPA with a stronger score. And so you could, when looking at percentiles on the SAT, PSAT, or ACT, I would also say that it's important to keep in mind what the GPA is. Specifically, for example, if, let's say, your goal is, again, University of Maryland College Park, and let's say that you take the PSAT and you score in the 94th percentile of test takers, but let's say that your weighted GPA is 4.1. Well, in that case, my recommendation would be to really try to raise your weighted GPA to as close to a 4.44 as possible, which is right around the average accepted GPA, weighted GPA for Wootson students who want to go to the University of Maryland. In that case, it's the GPA that's going to be bringing students down, not the test scores. And school, let's say they have a 4.7. Well, in that case, what students want to do is try to get their test scores to be as strong as their weighted GPA. So maybe they want to try to score in the 98th or 99th percentile, which again are very high scores. And as we'll talk about later, if a student can't quite get there, that might be a reason to go test optional if that option exists. In Georgetown, as we'll talk about in a little bit, unfortunately, they're now requiring test scores. But I would say that's how a few things to keep in mind. The GPA, I would say, is more important than test scores. With that being said, let's take a look at the SAT. So in this case, as many of you know, they've started offering the SAT in school. And it depends on the year date. And so I would encourage you to kind of be on the lookout for CPS schools. And that is a school. And I think for many students, it's convenient. They're going to be in school anyway, so they figure, why not just go ahead and take the SAT then as well? But I should mention that it's just like any other SAT. So you're not required to take it on that day. And SAT is administered in March, it's administered in May, it's administered. There are other opportunities to take it as well. You don't have to take it during the school day SAT, but it is a very convenient option for a lot of students. Let's see if I can. Now, as I kind of alluded to earlier, there are certain trends at work here where a lot of colleges, so just to kind of take a step back, during COVID, because especially during the beginning of COVID, a lot of students or a lot of colleges went test optional. Almost all colleges went test optional because there was a period of time when it was just impossible to take the SAT and the ACT when that allows students to apply without test scores. The ones that don't, many of them prefer students in school without test scores, but in many cases it is easy to access And there's really no harm in taking these tests because you don't have, but it is whether they want to take it. And again, I'll kind of come back to University of Maryland because that is a very popular school. University of Maryland is test optional until fall 2025. So for any junior University of Maryland, when you apply next fall. But for any sophomores, that may not necessarily be the case. And University of Maryland, last time I checked, has not decided what it will do in term. To be safe, I would recommend every right for them. I'll go ahead and I'll answer them at the end, but for now, I think we're getting close. You who are maybe a little bit unfamiliar with the ACT, I know when I was a high school student at Wooten, I really didn't know much about the ACT. The SAT was really the only test kind of out there that students took. And it wasn't until we actually started preparing students as my professional career that I really get familiar with the ACT. And in many cases, I think the ACT is easier to improve upon and might be the better option for some students. But the ACT is also changing. And they're also going to be providing a digital option starting in April 2025. However, it's just an option, based option. The digital and the paper-based option are going to take effect at different times. So specifically, the digital April 2025, the digital option that's going to take effect in April 2025 is going to, they're going to make the science section optional. You may know a data analysis section, and there's very little science that students need to know for it. Also doing a lot of what the SAT students more time. That by becoming more like the SAT and the way questions will also become more difficult. The questions correctly, time per question, that's probably going to come at the expense of the question difficulty. The paper-based changes, like I mentioned, are starting in September 2025. And the reason why I'm going into such granular detail about this is because for those students who are fast test takers, who are finishing tests at school ahead of time, who are not struggling with timing issues on the PSAT or the SAT, then I would recommend that you consider the ACT, and you can, if you're a junior now, because this may be the last year that they're going to administer the ACT in ninth grade, then really what you're going to see, you might even find yourself taking both at some point in time and seeing which one you do better. All right, so this kind of leads me to my grades. And I'll start with the youngest students, ninth graders, or even for those of you who have eighth grade children, I would recommend that you consider taking a PSAT designed specifically for 8th and 9th graders. Again, there's no need to prepare for it. Student can just take it. It takes about 2.5 hours, as I mentioned. And then you can kind of get a sense of how strong their reading, writing, and math skills are, or how well they're doing on these specific sections. It's true, these are not perfect exams. Just because a student doesn't do well, for example, on the writing section, doesn't mean that they're not good writers. The SAT and the ACT assess on a very narrow sliver of skills. The writing section is a perfect example. The writing section assesses primarily on grammar usage. So if a student is not very well acquainted with the grammar rules, then of course they're going to struggle a little bit on it, but it's something that they can improve over time. And I always think it's better to know earlier rather than later where students stand so they can decide if they want to take steps to kind of adjust where they are. For those who are 10th graders, again, the PSAT is tomorrow, as Principal Nelson had mentioned. But again, if they haven't prepared, that's okay. Just ask them to take it seriously, because then in a couple of months, usually, you'll get the test scores back and you can get a sense of, okay, well, this is how Johnny or Sally are doing on the PSAT. And are we happy with how they're doing in terms of the percentile? And is that consistent with what kind of colleges they might want to apply to? And then you can decide whether it makes sense to get started earlier or to focus on other aspects of their, academic profile. Maybe they want to get involved in more extracurricular activities, or maybe they need to focus a little bit more on grades, or maybe something else. For 11th graders, I have a bit of a different recommendation because they're getting ready in many cases to take the real SAT or ACT if they haven't already done so. Now, again, traditionally, most students will take these tests in the spring of their 11th grade year, but many students nowadays do take it a little earlier. If you haven't taken it yet, that's perfectly okay. With that being said, the PSAT is a good indicator, or again, of where students are likely to score on the SAT. So you can use your PSAT score, and I would recommend taking an ACT mock either on your own at home under time conditions, or at a place that offers mocks, and then comparing the scores to find out which test you're likely to do better on. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. You could look at the percentiles. That's one way to compare the scores, although with the PSAT, it is a little trickier because the PSAT percentiles are based on grade level. And in this case, it's 11th graders in the beginning of their 11th grade year, whereas the ACT percentiles are for 11th and 12th graders who in many cases have already prepped. But at the same time, if you can also go on their concordance tables on the official ACT website that you can use to compare ACT and SAT scores. And then you can decide, which one they're likely to do better on. And so with that being said, the last part I want to focus on is, again, just kind of emphasizing that the PSAT is a good practice test. Students should take it seriously, but they should also remember that grades are and will continue to be, in many cases, the first thing that colleges will look at. So if a student is maybe struggling in some of their classes, I would definitely focus on that first and foremost. I'll also mention that more and more colleges are placing more weight on extracurricular activities. And the reason that's true is because in many cases, after you look at the grades, after you look at the scores, there's not a lot to differentiate strong applicants. And so it comes down to, are they getting involved in things outside of school, whether it's school clubs, volunteer activities, internships, all of those things are great. And so I encourage our students in particular to making sure that they're not just, focusing on school, that they're also doing things outside of school. And the last thing I want to mention is that, and this is a bit of a warning, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news because I really want to make sure that parents of 12th graders in this case in particular, but also future parents understand that this is becoming a more pervasive issue on the college application. As many of you know, ChatGPT, and if any students are listening, I'm sure they already know as well, is an issue. And we're seeing a lot of students, unfortunately, using AI to try to write their college app essays. Many colleges are catching on. They're running those essays through AI checks to see if somebody used ChatGPT to write their essay. We're trying to do the same thing, but sometimes it is a little hard to catch. But I want to make sure that all parents and students who are listening understand that it is too risky. It is too risky to use these types of things for your college app essay. You shouldn't use the period, but colleges are going to possibly check to make sure you didn't use AI, and those AI checkers are becoming better every day. So please write the essays in earnest. You want to make sure you keep your tone and your voice in these essays. You want to make sure you talk about something personal if the question asks for it, but please don't rely on any AI generators, because as tempting as that may be at times, you're going to be doing a huge disservice for yourself. So that was my little warning to our seniors who are getting ready to. I know that I saw some in the chat, and hopefully I did not lag too much. Let's see. And the answer kind of varies depending on what colleges you may want to apply to, but also depending on, quite frankly, who you ask. Traditionally, the answer has been no more than 3 times. And that's still the answer in many cases that I give for a couple of reasons. The first is I do still think that some colleges frown upon a student taking these tests too many times, because they're going to look at the scores and they're going to feel like the student worries too much about the scores and not enough about learning or doing other things. So based on that, I would say 3 times is probably how many times you'll want to take it. But also, we want to keep in mind that the scores after the first or second time are the scores are what they are. So there's really usually no need to take it a 4th or 5th time. With all that being said, as I mentioned earlier, it is true that students have the option of sending scores to colleges. And unless a college asks for all scores, then technically students can take it as many times as they want and send the scores that they want to send to the colleges that don't ask for all of their scores. So hopefully that answers the question. Again, my rule of thumb is 2 to 3 times most students will take it in this area who are applying to fairly competitive colleges. And I see there's another question, and it's, are there subject SAT2? So great question. They have eliminated the SAT2 subject tests. So at this point, colleges, students don't need to worry about that at all. However, as I think Principal Nelson was saying, colleges will look to see what AP classes students are taking and also AP scores. And so a lot of times with very little to differentiate applicants, that becomes another factor that colleges will look at. So our recommendation is to challenge yourself, not to overwhelm yourself with classes, but to challenge yourself with a rigorous course load. And if possible, take the accompanying AP exams to make sure that, you know, you can show that you're proficient in those subjects. I'll be more than happy to answer any other questions. I see that there's, will the slides be available? I'll defer to maybe Brian on that. I'll be more than happy to post the slides or to send them, and then if anybody is interested. Okay. I'm not sure if anybody has any other questions, but I'll defer to, in that case, Brian in that case. And Brian, thank you so much again.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. It's a great presentation. Are there any further questions? All right, and we'll get those slides posted. The recording will be available as well. And we appreciate Pavel for joining us tonight and giving us that really informative presentation just in time to take PSATs tomorrow. Our next meeting is going to be on November 19th at 7 p.m. We hope you join us for that meeting. And yeah, that's it for the question. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Thank you, Pavel, and hope everybody has a great evening. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all
So much.
Bye.